And today we're going to look at a case study, an example of an area that's, I think, indicative of where we are. It's a new book, Original Sin, and it's a book by two journalists. One is a guy named Alex Thompson, who was one of the most energetic and aggressive reporters in covering Joe Biden's mental decline. And the other author is a guy named Jake Tapper, who's an anchor at CNN. And what I want to do today is to explain to you why this book represents a crisis and maybe an opportunity for the American media to regain credibility with the public. This goes back to the question of Joe Biden's mental decline. And I continue to laugh when I hear people say, we didn't know, and we only had a hint of it, or we saw it in the debate, but not before. That's something reporters sometimes say, and a lot of Democratic officials say. It's a farce. So I've covered Joe Biden and know Joe Biden for pretty much my whole career. And in 2017, just after he left the White House, he had a book out and he was on a book tour. And I saw him do a book event, very friendly interviewer, big crowd. And he was a train wreck. He was glassy-eyed. He had trouble following the conversation. He talked it hauntingly. Again, this is 2017, long before he ran for president in 2020. And I said after the event, thank goodness Joe Biden's out of office. Thank goodness he's no longer going to be in public life. And how could his family and his advisors possibly let him go on a book tour when he was in no position to be on a public stage? 2017. Now, I'm not a doctor. I know Joe Biden decently well, but I there are plenty of people who know him better. I couldn't believe he ran for president in 2020. And so, to me, his mental decline was apparent in 2017. And now what you have is a bunch of people who say it was only apparent to them on the day of the debate in the 2024 campaign. The reason this new book is causing such an uproar, even though it's not out until next week, is because the book purports to explain the cover-up inside the White House. The cover-up inside the White House of Joe Biden's mental decline. I don't understand how there could be a cover-up of something that was on television on a nearly nightly basis. In either Joe Biden's performance, which was uneven, there were times when he was fine. We've all seen people with mental decline. We know that sometimes things are better than others. But it was on TV every night. And in 2020 and 2024, it was also on TV when Joe Biden wasn't there. He was not visible. And the ability to have credibility to cover presidents was undermined significantly from 2024 back to 2019 at least. Today, Donald Trump, there's so many things that need scrutiny. His acceptance of this airplane, his family's business dealings in the Middle East with the very monarchies that he's meeting with on this trip. I could go on. For those in this country who say the press is not doing a tough enough job scrutinizing Donald Trump, I agree. The press should always be super tough. But what's happened is, because of the way they covered Joe Biden, the press has lost credibility with the public. So why is this significant? Today, this news of this new book has come leaking out. Two news organizations reporting on it. One is The Guardian, which got a copy of the book, and they report that a lot of Democrats are very unhappy that Joe Biden kept running and he should have gotten out of the race, and that there was efforts to cover up for him. Another report from Alex Thompson, who now writes for Axios, he wrote for Politico previously, says that there was discussion within the Biden camp of perhaps Biden needing a wheelchair, but he couldn't use a wheelchair during the campaign, and that if he won re-election, there was talk he would use it then. That's interesting. Those are interesting things. I don't doubt either of those things are true. But it's this question of accountability, this question of, did reporters do everything they could to hold Joe Biden and his team accountable for his obvious decline? Few interviews, few press conferences, few public appearances. Doing things in public, not every day, but often, that showed obvious mental decline. This wasn't something for insiders to know or whisper about, the terms of the cover-up were, but the fact of Biden's decline was not a secret, and the public saw it. So these two guys have now written this book, okay? And their publisher, aware of the criticism that's already come their way, saying, how can you write a book after the election about a cover-up that we all saw with our own eyes during the campaign? Made a video, a publisher making a video, not that common. Here's a bit of the video they made, trying to establish the bona fides of the two authors, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Tapper, that they were on this from the beginning.
Will you pledge that if you're elected, you will be transparent about your health, all
Yes.
facets of your health, with urgency so that we know.
Yes.
One poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024, and the top reason they gave was your age. You know, that's not a good number for President Biden. 2/3 of the American people say he's not sharp enough to be president.
Yeah, I mean, how can you use the bully pulpit when you don't have a bully you can put in the pulpit?
Okay, so you're part of the 23% of adults who are not concerned about the president's ability to be president because of his age and stamina. I mean, I know incumbents in general are not popular right now, but do you ever think maybe we should have a new candidate?
There's a little bit of denialism with the president.
This is a particularly bad week for this report and its comments about President Biden's faculties and his memory to come out, because twice this week he has acted as if he, in 2021, spoke to European leaders who have been dead for years. Part of the job of president is having the confidence of the American people in your faculties.
The White House's response every single time it has come up for 3.5 years has been to deflect, to gaslight, to not tell the truth, not just to reporters, not just to other Democrats, but even at times to themselves.
So you saw, and if you're listening on the podcast, you heard there are two voices. One is Alex Thompson, who was an aggressive reporter, as aggressive as almost any reporter, in trying to figure out what was going on with Joe Biden's mental acuity and how his team was handling it. And then you heard the voice of Jake Tapper. And the publisher did as good a job as it could to find clips of Jake Tapper seeming to be at least interested in the topic of Joe Biden's mental decline. So we thought, well, what are the counters to that? Because I know that no one at CNN was particularly aggressive about this, and I had no indication from my memory that Jake Tapper was aggressive. So we went and looked at the full appearances, the full segments in which Jake Tapper was, in which the clips were pulled for that publisher video, to ask ourselves, did the full clips demonstrate that Jake Tapper, in attitude and determination and focus, was in real time during the campaign, during Biden's presidency, interested in getting to the bottom of this? So let's look at some of the clips from the publisher video, but beyond what they chose to include. Here is Joe Biden's interview with Jake Tapper in 2022.
You're about to turn 80 next month. Happy birthday ahead of time. Whenever anyone raises concerns about your age, you're the oldest president in the history of the United States, you always say, watch me. Voters have been watching you. Democratic voters approve of the job you're doing. Democratic voters overwhelmingly like you. But one poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024. And the top reason they gave was your age. So what's your message to Democrats who like you, who like what you've done, but are concerned about your age and the demands of the job?
Well, they're concerned about whether or not I can get anything done. Look what I've gotten done. Name me a president in recent history that's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years. Not a joke. You may not like what I got done, but the vast majority of the American people do like what I got done.
So he wishes him happy birthday. He asked him about one poll. He's not asking him about what was already in evidence then, which is mental decline. He's simply saying there's a poll that says Democrats don't like you. So I look at that and I say, that's not the way I would have asked it. That's not a guy who was determined to get beyond just asking about a poll. That's a guy who was want to wish that president a happy birthday. All right. Here's another clip. This is again from another interview that another appearance the publisher included. This is the White House press secretary and Jake Tapper asking her a question. Again, this is from the same segment that the publisher used to prove that Jake Tapper was serious about getting to the bottom of this cover-up.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the 77% who are concerned.
No, but I've had conversations with some of your colleagues in the White House press corps when we travel abroad, how it is hard for us to keep up with this president who is constantly working every day to get things done and making sure that we are delivering for the American people. And I think that's what matters. I get it. I get what you're asking me, but the record matters too, Jake. What he's been able to do, no other president has been able to do if you look at his legislative record. And that matters.
What did the White House do to try to control the press, to keep them from asking? A compliant and pliant press. One is they privately called them and browbeat them and said, do not cover this. If you cover this, you'll be cut off. I don't know if they did that to Jake Tapper or not, but they also did what she did there in public. They said things that were ridiculous. Oh, he runs circles around us. He's tireless. I mean, look at his schedule. By the time that interview had occurred, there were many instances of the president having a very light schedule on overseas trips, canceling events with foreign leaders. They say, well, he always did his job and he did his job great. No, he canceled events and he had a very light schedule. So here again, He asked the pro forma question. She bats it away with one of their usual lines of spin. Oh, he's so energetic. He runs circles around the younger staff. There's no evidence of it. It's a made-up piece of spin, and he seemed to accept it there. Here's another example, again, drawn from the same appearance that the publisher used to prove that Jake Tapper was tough. And this is with another Biden spokesperson, Kate Bedingfield, who, by the way, was a CNN consultant. So she's being paid by CNN to spin for Joe Biden with her colleagues, with whom she shares a green room and everything else. This is from February of 2024, shortly before everything went south for Joe Biden.
So this memory issue is already out there.
But I want to know how many voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, you think know the difference between
No,
Cole
they don't
and,
know, but
and
they
Merkel,
know when
or are
somebody
going to cast their vote. Well, you asked.
Sorry, okay.
Or are going to cast their vote for president based on whether someone is naming Emmanuel Macron or Francois Mitterrand, whose name they probably don't even know.
Here is perhaps the biggest tell of all. If you're a reporter and you are determined to get to the bottom of this, if you think there may be a cover-up at the highest levels of the government, a potential constitutional crisis, you would not treat Biden officials with humor or lightness. You would be tough and determined to get to the bottom of it. You don't ask about it in the context of polls.